Hi, I'm Kim with Bee Heaven Landscaping, where we make beautiful landscapes. I've written up a proposal for what types of flowers you should include in your residential subdivision. So first off, I'd like to encourage you to protect your pollinator population. They are considered beneficial arthropods, and this would include bees and butterflies, and they provide valuable ecosystem services worth up to $8 billion to the U.S. agriculture each year. Um, on a more basic level, they help with plants reproducing and supporting biodiversity. So you really would like to have that in your residential areas. When choosing your florals, I went through a couple of different methods. So first of all, I want to make sure when we do plant your florals, if you choose us, that you plant them in groups to increase pollination and foraging efficiency for your plant pollinators. Help them find and feed on desired flowers. It'll also allow them to expend less energy in the search for plants if you group them together. I also took into consideration that we want to make sure that we include blooms throughout the season. So we want to make sure we're providing your pollinators with food from early spring to late fall. Also to plant a diversity of flowers. You'll notice in my proposal that I've chosen flowers of many different colors, fragrances, different heights, and different bloom seasons to make sure that your pollinators are provided with food sources all season long. I've also made sure to include a mixture of annual and perennial species because it's proven that if you have more rich herbaceous plant life, it's going to enhance your biodiversity values in your area. So it would help out with the food, the shelter, and the nesting sites of your pollinators. And I've also made sure that some of your plants act as plant hosts for caterpillars for your future pollinating butterflies. So I'm just going to go through and talk about why I proposed the plants I did for you. So first of all, I did choose a mixture of native and non-native plants for your residential area. I chose native because they provide habitat permanency, which means that they're helping to ensure year-round provision of resources. It helps support the native biodiversity and the reestablishment of native plants. I made sure that I also chose native because they're best adapted to the local growing season, climates, and soil. They reduce the risk of plants becoming weedy or invasive, and they're typically low maintenance and self-sufficient. But I'd also do not want you to forget to include your non-natives in your exotics. A lot of people will say that non-native and exotics should not be put in your garden, but they are actually very good for pollinators. It's been found that they can enhance habitat by planting a variety of flowering plants. A lot of times it is biased towards native, and I did try and include a lot of your native and near native species, but I did put a couple of non-natives into your garden area as well because it helps to extend the flowering season. It can also provide beneficial resources for specialist groups of insects that you might have pollinating. And also certain non-native plantings can actually attract a greater abundance of pollinators than their native counterparts. So here's my proposal for your communal areas. So I chose a mixture of plants. I went everywhere from flowers to bushes / shrubs to trees. So if you look on the presentation, you'll notice that I chose a variety of flowering seasons. So you'll notice I have your redbud trees, your serviceberry, and your moss phlox for those early blooming periods to make sure that your pollinators have early blooming period. They also have a variety of flower colors and scents. So you have lavender pink flowers on your redbud trees, you have white flowers on your serviceberry trees, and then you have purple or pink flowers on your phlox. And then moving into more of the summertime, I have included a variety of plants that flower from around June all the way up until the almost fall months. So we have your anise hyssop, your white lace flower, your heath aster, and your butterfly weed. So all of those are more of your summertime flowers. Your sometimes some of them go into a little bit of the spring. Notice again, there's a mixture of native and non-native ones. So we have again a mixture of annuals and perennials too to make sure that you're having the best possible bloom that you can have. And again, notice you've got purples, whites, yellows, and orange blooms. I also made sure that caterpillars, again, as I mentioned earlier, need host plants. So your heath aster and butterfly weeds are both going to act as host plants for your caterpillars, which will eventually grow into butterflies that will help with the pollination process. So those plants can host a variety of butterflies, including painted ladies and monarchs, in addition to many others. And then again, I wanted to make sure I included some of your more late season ones. So we have, again, some of these bloom for much longer periods. You have your lantana, your mountain mint, and your showy goldenrod. Again, so we've got lantana, it's a shrub. You have mountain mint, which is a non-native clumping perennial, and you have your goldenrod, which everybody's probably seen goldenrod. A lot of people consider it to be a weed, but it's actually really good with pollinators, and it has small yellow flowers. So again, notice we have a mixture of flower colors, a mixture of blooming periods. Some things I wanted to note that I took into account. I avoided modern hybrids because plant breeders will often sacrifice the pollen and nectar resources on those flowers to instead get a showier bloom. So they look really beautiful, but they're not doing what they need to help out with your plant pollinators. And if you don't have your plant pollinators around, your flowers are going to suffer. So the usefulness of cultivars depends on the trait selected. I tried to stick with ones that I was sure were more native and original. But if you want to look into cultivars, we can do that as well. I also found in studies that modified variations of double petals or clusters of showy sterile steeples attracted fewer bees compared to related plants with more accessible florals. So that's something to look into too, is making sure that if you are going for a modified version of something, that we're choosing it for a specific trait that you want to have. And the last thing I wanted to hit on is just that you may feel the need to get rid of native weeds. I saw that you had what were considered some herbaceous weedy plants in your current residential common areas. Well, you might want to get rid of some of your weeds. You also do want to keep some of them around so that you can help in those early blooming periods, especially when a lot of the plants are not ready to bloom yet. The weeds actually act as floral resources, such as clovers. So it's important to have some of those around. So I understand that you're going to want to landscape and make it beautiful, but make sure you're taking into account that you're feeding your pollinators in the early seasons. So any of those herbaceous weeds you were talking about, we'll have to look and see what you have in your current flower arrangements, but we can look into those and see if there's ones that we can keep. So that is my proposal for your communal area. You'll be speaking with some other representatives about how you'll want to manage your landscaping. And you can reach me at Bee Heaven if you have any questions. Thank you for listening to my proposal.